start today's session by making our way into child's pose. So child's pose, you have a couple options here. Bring your toes together, and your knees can either go wide with the mat, or they can be closer together. So it's really up to you. Another nice prop, if you'd like, is to take a blanket or something like this and put it in between your heels and your sits bones. Just helps to bring those points closer together and also can offer support. Find your child's pose. Just begin by settling in, by focusing on your breath, focusing on any sensations you feel, maybe focusing on what it's like to be in a position of rest. Forehead is resting on the earth. Allow it to feel heavy, to feel supported. And expand your awareness out to the other places where your body's making contact with the earth. Maybe starting at your fingertips, scanning down, pausing at each place. Moving through that scan. Keep completed that, bringing your attention back to your breath. As you inhale, perhaps your belly expands and fills the space between your legs. If you have your knees wide. Maybe if your knees aren't together, you feel some resistance. Doing your best here to focus on the here and now. So we have a big assignment or a test or a conversation with a friend or a family member that may be giving us some stress. Maybe some plans you're really excited about. Great. Set those to the side for now. Rest and stillness feels good. Please feel free to stay in this position. But I'd like to invite you to engage in a little side body stretch here. Going either off to the right or the left, whatever feels most inviting to you. Move your fingers off to whichever side you choose. Off to that side of the mat, reaching towards that top corner. Maybe feeling a stretch in the shoulders, maybe feeling a stretch in the side body. As you inhale deeply, and then exhale, acknowledging and noticing any different sensations you feel and where you might feel them as you breathe. deep breath on this side. Filling up your lung. With a nice exhale, maybe sighing it out. When you're ready, taking your fingers to the other side of the mat. Feeling a stretch on the other side now. Maybe taking notice of a different sensation on a different side of your body. Maybe they feel the same. Just allowing your breath to go at a natural pace, natural rhythm. Inviting and noticing of sensation here. When you're ready, whether it's now or in a moment or two, make your way back towards center, back towards your expression of child's pose. Just reminding yourself that at any point today in this practice together, you are always welcome to hit the pause button, just rest, or come into this position. This position, this child's pose, is always available to you, no matter what I'm doing on the screen. Stay here if it feels good, or when you're ready, coming up to tabletop. Removing any blankets or props if you were using one for support. Finding balance here, weight distributed evenly amongst your fingers. Maybe your toes are tucked like mine, or maybe they're flat. So whatever feels most comfortable for you. I like to tuck my toes, so I'm going to. Just pausing here, feeling that connection with the earth. Maybe pushing away, creating space. Yet at the same time, grounding down and connecting. Staying in stillness if that's right, or engaging in some movements of cat-cow, some cycles of cat-cow, with an inhale, dropping your belly, opening up your heart to the front of the mat, gaze towards the ceiling, tailbone pointing towards the ceiling. With an exhale, curling your spine, sending your gaze towards your belly button. Inhaling, coming into cow. And exhaling into cow. Moving at your own pace here, or with me, it's up to you. Maybe exploring a little bit of a quicker motion, or even a little bit of a slower motion. It doesn't really matter what speed you choose, just as long as you're connecting your breath to a specific movement. So inhale with cow, and exhale with cow. Maybe your eyes are closed. Maybe there is gentle gaze. And if this motion feels good, please feel free to stay here, or maybe invite some creativity in your movements. Maybe as you exhale, looking off to one side, and inhaling, coming back to center, with an exhale, going off to the other side. Seeing if you can draw your hip towards your shoulder. Maybe even some bigger movements, some circles. Maybe engaging in bigger movements altogether, making circles with your whole body. Again, this movement, this creativity, this freedom, it doesn't really matter what you do, just as long as you're connecting a certain motion with breath, with an inhale, and a certain motion with exhale. Let's explore our creativity and our movement here for another couple of breath cycles, but when you're ready, you can come back to stillness with tabletop. If you're still moving now, please come back to neutral tabletop. Tuck your toes if they're not. Take your hands maybe a foot or so out in front, fingers splayed nice and wide, and pushing your tailbone up and back into your first downward facing dog of the day. So because this is our first dog, we need a nice deep bend in the knees. Rolling our shoulders down our side body. So that we're doing our best to draw a straight line from our fingers to our tailbone. So if we find that our shoulders are rounding and we tend to be leaning forward onto our palms, that can get really achy in our wrists. It's a pretty common thing to do. Just see if you can push back by having a little bit of a deeper bend. You can also explore puppy pose, or even just coming back to child's pose here. Maybe taking your dog for a walk, maybe exploring stillness here too. Wherever you are, bending your knees deeply here and making your way to the front of the mat with an exhale and a forward fold. It's just like with a downward dog when your knees are bent deeply here. Maybe we have a block close by. Allow your head to become heavy. If we're feeling a little bit tighter today, a nice deep bend and maybe a block or a block shape on its highest setting. Maybe observing any tightness we feel here. When you're ready with an inhale, slowly rising up to reach towards the sky. And exhale, hands at heart center. We'll go through a few half sun salutations together. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, flat back, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, slowly stacking your vertebrae as you reach up. And then exhale your hands back to heart center. Beautiful. 2 more rounds. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, slowly stacking your vertebrae as you rise up and then reach up towards the ceiling. And exhale, hands at heart center. Last time here, inhale, Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Perhaps you're already noticing a change in flexibility. Maybe not. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, hands at heart center. As we get our bodies ready for our arm balancing pose, we want to explore different poses to wake up our core and our shoulders. So we're going to go through some sun salutations and some variations of those, but instead of moving intentionally with our breath, we're going to slow down. Just going to move with our breath, but certain poses will hold for a little bit longer. And so if at any point, always know that you can modify and always come back into child's pose. Start with a tabletop variation of sun salutations. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plant your hands and step back into tabletop. Planting your hands with an inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. Tuck your toes if they're not, and send yourself back into your downward facing dog. Knees bent, shoulders roll to the side, shake your head yes and no. Sending your heart and your forehead towards the mat if you can. Tuck your toes. No, don't do that. Bend your knees. Bend your knees, send your gaze to the top of the mat. And walk to meet your hands with an exhale and forward fold. Inhale, rising up. And exhale, hands at heart center. You can continue to go through the tabletop variation if that's right for you today. We'll be building slowly, so feel free to follow me as well. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, flat back. Exhale, forward fold. When you're ready, plant your hands, step back to a modified plank, that's knees on the earth. Inhale. Exhale, lowering down, elbows nice and close to your body. Inhale, baby cobra. And just pausing here for a moment, removing those hands off the ground, really engaging our back muscles here and pushing down to the earth with the tops of our feet, really engaging our quads as well, these muscles right here. Lifting our knees up off the mat. And at your next exhale, you can release. Pushing back through modified plank into downward facing dog. Bend your knees and your gaze to the top of the mat. Meeting in forward fold with an exhale. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, hands at heart center. Go through one more round like that. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plant your hands, step back to modified plank or full plank. I'm going to go into a modified plank so I can still talk to you. Inhaling at the top. Exhale, lowering down, really engaging in our core, going nice and slow if we can, in control. Inhale, rising up to baby cobra, moving our hands, pushing into the earth. Lovely. And as your next exhale, pushing back through plank or modified plank into downward facing dog. Maybe we're still finding movement, maybe we're walking our dog. Maybe we're beginning to play with straightening our knees if that's available to us and something we even want to do, don't have to. Bend your knees, send your gaze to the top of your mat. Have your feet meet your hands. Then exhale, forward fold. Inhale, rising up. And exhale, hands at heart center. Lovely. You can continue to do that. I'm going to introduce a couple different poses here. One, really, as we explore a different way we can work our core in a sun salutation. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plant your hands and step back to a modified plank. We'll pause here for a moment. I've got my toes tucked because that's comfortable for me. But really, I'm drawing my navel towards my spine, really engaging as much of my core here as I can. Holding myself stable in a nice flat back. And going into a side plank, we'll start with a modified plank. You can pick whichever side you'd like to start on. I'm going to start with my left leg just so you guys can see me. But take whichever side you choose to start with. Because I'm choosing my left side, I'm going to take my left leg and I'm going to rotate it off to the side of my mat. Set it for almost like a kickstand. It's going perpendicular to the side of my mat. I'm going to ground down through my left hand. I'm going to open my side body now to a modified side plank. This is my right foot, the one that I'm not starting with my left side. So this one is going to go nice and flat and straight. You can see my foot is parallel with the bottom of my mat. And then my arm is going to reach up towards the sky. And I'm still drawing my core together, asking my core to give me stability here. Let's hold for another breath. When you're ready, taking your hand back down to the earth. Bringing your right knee back down to meet your left, rotating your left knee back. So we're back in modified plank. Let's go to the other side now. So taking that right leg and rotating it so that it's perpendicular with the side of the mat. And then opening up your side body. That left arm now reaching up. And my left leg extending, foot flat on the earth if it's accessible to me. And realigning your arm if you have to so that your wrist is resting underneath your shoulder. Let's hold here for one more breath. With an exhale, coming back to a modified plank. Inhaling at the top. And exhale, lowering down slowly and with control. Inhaling up to baby cobra. You can keep your hands there if you want, but just a reminder that it's all in the back muscles with baby cobra. And with an exhale, pushing back through your plank and back into downward facing dog. Finding stillness or a little bit of movement. Knowing that child's pose is always available to you, don't forget. With an exhale, bending your knees, walking forward and finishing that exhale in forward fold. With an inhale, rising up. And exhaling, hands at heart center. Lovely. Next round, inhale, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plant your hands and step back to modified plank or full plank this time. But I'm going to stay in modified plank. And when you're ready, I'm going to go off to my left side. Go off to your left side too, or your right, opening up your side body into a side plank. If you'd like to explore a full side plank, take that, in my case, it's my left foot, and I'm going to extend it out to actually go underneath my right foot. You can see, we call this stacking. So my right foot is stacked on top of my left. Core is really engaged here. And take your hip, don't let it dip. See if you can draw it up towards the ceiling. You can also, if you're kind of like halfway between a modified plank and a full plank, you can use this leg as a kickstand. Let's hold here one more breath. And with an exhale, coming back to plank and modified plank. And now exploring the other side. I'm going to stay here in a modified plank because I have a bit of a shoulder injury and I just want to protect that. But you can choose on this side, your other side, modified side plank or a full side plank. Really engaging our core. Even if we're in a modified plank, sometimes it can be easy to like relax those core muscles. Really drawing navel to spine. And when you're ready, coming back to plank or modified plank in the center. Inhaling at the top and slowly, with control, lowering down. Inhale, baby cobra. And exhale, pushing back, downward facing dog, intense puppy pose, maybe child's pose. Don't forget those options that are available to you. And with an exhale, bending your knees, sending your gaze to the top of the mat and meeting in a forward fold, finishing your exhale. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, hands at heart center. We're going to do a few more rounds of that, but if you need to shake out those wrists, feel free to do that. Maybe give it a stretch. If our wrists aren't ready for this type of thing, it can be very sore. So feel free to always pause, even if I'm not, to rolling out those wrists. All right. Next round, inhale, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, stepping back to your plank, modified or full. And when you're ready, inhaling, opening up to one side, to a full plank or a modified side plank. We're going to add one more layer here, okay? I'm going to go into a supported full plank here. Remember to draw that hip upwards, and then with an exhale, I'm going to dip. Inhale, drawing up. Exhale, dip. Inhale, drawing up. We're going to do one more breath. Exhale, drop. Inhale, lift. Coming back to center. And then coming to the other side. Modified or full side plank. Whichever one you choose, remember, really engage that core. Draw that hip up towards the ceiling. Exhale, dip. Inhale, rise up. Exhale, dip. Inhale, rise up. One more time. Exhale, dip. Inhale, rise up. Awesome. Coming back to center. Full plank or modified plank with an exhale, lowering down slowly with control. Inhale, baby cobra. Whew, exhale, pushing back. Child's pose, intense puppy pose. Downward facing dog. Breathing here. Exhale, bend your knees, send your gaze to the top of the mat. And exhaling in forward fold. Awesome job, you guys. Inhale as you rise up, reaching towards the ceiling. And exhale, hands at heart center. Really lovely job. This is the last round. You get to pick your own yogi adventure. You can follow me if you want to, or pick whatever variations you want to play around with. And I'll cue as many as I can without getting too wordy. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plant your hands and step back to your plank pose. Inhaling at the top. And then exhale, opening up to your side, either modified plank or full plank. I'm gonna go full plank with a kickstand here. With an inhale, draw that hip towards the ceiling. Exhale, dip. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, dip. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, dip. And then coming back to center. Going to the opposite side now. Choosing full plank, modified plank, or otherwise. Arm up towards the ceiling if that's available to you. Inhale, draw that hip towards the ceiling. Exhale, dip. Inhale, rising up to the ceiling. Exhale, dip. Inhale, rising up to the ceiling. Exhale, dip. Awesome, coming back to center. Your plank, modified or full plank. Inhale at the top. And then exhale slowly, with control, as slow as you can. Lowering down to the mat. Inhale, baby cobra. And exhale, pushing back. Child's pose, intense puppy pose. Downward facing dog. Breathing here. And then taking your knees down to the mat. Going into child's pose if you're not there already. Just allowing yourself to rest. Breathing here. Taking your arms wide, let hands go on the shoulders. Any observations in your body now? From this child's pose to your first one, do you feel different? Do you notice anything more open? Stay here if you like. You can push up to a seated warrior pose, which is just sitting on your shins. If this doesn't feel good to you, you can support yourself with a block or a blanket, or if you want to, you can just come out of this sitting on the side like this, just whatever feels comfortable for you. I'm going to stretch out our wrists a little bit. Like I mentioned before, sometimes this amount of work with the wrist can feel quite sore. I know that I, after having a break for a while, have to work into that. So you can start by just taking your hands and bending your fingers back. Maybe you close your eyes here, or a gentle gaze. If you want something more intense, you can come onto your knees or whatever position allows you to do this with more ease.
palm flat or flat-ish, best you can. And then almost using your body as leverage to get that front arm stretch. This is probably most likely where you're feeling this right now, is right here. And even if you're choosing to do it this way, you can play around with some sensations and rotating your hands around. Seeing how maybe that changes the stretch even up into your shoulder. Jiggle your wrist, feels good. Even fold over into the top. I have to be careful with this. I feel this very intensely in my wrist. With resting, you know, the top of my hand. You may be doing both sides simultaneously, but if you haven't been, go ahead and switch sides. That would be much more efficient if you're doing both sides. And if you want it deeper, you can actually go down into the earth here. This is a really nice stretch also to do if you are on your computer a lot or holding your phone a lot. It just provides a different stretch, a different sensation. And again, if you want to play around with rotating your hands, seeing how that changes on your shoulder. I feel this very differently on my right side. As I mentioned a moment ago, I have an injury in my shoulder right now. So I don't have the range of motion that I do on my left side. All right, if you haven't already, go ahead and go into the top of your hand and bending that way. Such an interesting sensation for me. Beautiful. All right, well, you can keep stretching your wrists if it feels good. You give it a shake out. Making some circles, rolling around. And then in your own way, make your way to the top of your mat. And because we're working our core, we're warming up our shoulders, as we go through our standing poses, what I'm going to ask that you do is as we go in and out of these poses, you use your core to lift your torso up, to lift your body up. As opposed to sometimes where we might use the strength of our legs. We have a lot of strength in our legs, typically. A lot of people do, not everyone. And so some people tend to use that instead of their core. I'm going to ask that we all use our core, and I'll cue us through this. But I just wanted to plant that seed as we carry on our flow together. So pick whichever side you like to start with. I'm going to inhale my right knee up so you guys can see me. Flexing that foot, hands at your hips, really drawing that navel to spine, engaging in our core. And as you do so, we're going to hinge forward, yet stepping back with our foot into Warrior Two. Taking a moment to adjust our stance, strong foundations here. Remember, our front foot is going to go towards the front of our mat. Our knee is going to be no more than a 90-degree angle, but it can be a little bit more open. And our back leg is nice and straight, engaged. It's parallel with the back of our mat, so my toes are pointing towards you. And again, my whole leg is engaged here. It's nice and straight. And my weight is distributed evenly amongst my feet. And my hips are open towards you. So again, just a reminder that your foundation of Warrior Two is almost certainly looking different than mine. Just a couple things we want to avoid is letting this leg back here just kind of be loosey-goosey. Making sure that our core is engaged and our front leg is engaged as well. Energetically, we're drawing into our body from the earth. I'm just kind of slugging you, or actually drawing upwards. And when we're ready, taking those arms and extending them straight out. And sending our gaze to the front and to the back to make sure that our arms aren't little cattywampus. Nice and straight. Gaze out towards the front of our fingers. And breathe here. Warrior poses ask us to engage in our power, to empower ourselves, what we already have inside of us. I'm going to introduce to you a new standing open pose. It's called extended side angle. So whatever leg you have out in front, mine's my left. The arm that's reaching out towards the front, take it to rest on that front thigh, keeping that core engaged. And our arm that was reaching behind us swoops down and then reaches out in front of us. So we create a nice straight angle, straight line from our fingertips down to our foot. Our gaze can go towards our arm, can also go towards the floor, or straight in front of us. Extended side angle. We can explore this pose and explore depths. Before we do that, take your attention to your tailbone. Is it pointing towards the back of your mat? If so, tuck it. Tuck it a little bit. So that your hips go forward just a skosh. If you'd like to explore with depth, a block is wonderful here. I like to explore with my block. Going a little bit deeper. Still creating that straight line. Adjusting if we go deeper. It's just optional though, we don't have to do this. And when you're ready, after you've played around with extended side angle, inhale yourself back up, warrior two. Exhaling into peaceful warrior, take that front arm as it rises up, the back arm rests on the back leg. But that foundation doesn't move. Coming back into warrior two. Straightening that front leg, getting ready to go into Trikonasana, triangle pose. Really heel toe this stance a little bit smaller. I'm gonna move my block. You might like your block there though. Hinging forward with the hips. Coming down that front arm, finding a thigh, finding a shin, finding a block, a foot, floor. However you'd like to express your triangle pose today. Tucking that tailbone if it's poking out towards the back of your mat, engaging our core. Lovely. And as we come back up to warrior two, using our core to lift our entire torso. Back in warrior two. And then cartwheeling your hands down. And seeing if you can, I'm going to ask you to see if you can do this now. Engaging your core, you might need to create some space here by pushing away from the earth, drawing your knee towards your chest, and then stepping back into plank pose. If that's like, oh, listen, I can't do that, that's okay. Just drop your knee and come into tabletop. Yeah, and then coming into your plank. Modified or full, lowering down. Inhale, baby cobra. And exhale, pushing back, downward facing dog. Bend your knees and your gaze to the top of the mat. Exhaling, forward fold. Inhale, you reach up. Exhale, hands at heart center. Beautiful. All right, next side. I'm going to switch so y'all can see me. Inhale your opposite knee. For me, it's my left. As you exhale, hinging, stepping back, warrior two. And I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to adjust my stance. Strong foundations. My front toes going towards the top of the mat, and I'm checking to see if I can see my big toes. My knees not tracking off to the right or to the left. It's just nice and in the center so I can just see my big toe above my knee. My back leg is engaged. Weight is evenly distributed, drawing energy up, and then adding my arms. And glance backward. And holding here. I'm getting ready to go into extended side angle so my base, my foundation stays the same. My front arm that's reaching out is going to rest on my front leg. I'm going to swoop my back arm down and out, creating a straight line from my fingertips down to my back foot. And then if you'd like to play a little bit, if you'd like to explore, perhaps lowering down, remembering to keep that tailbone tucked. That might change our adventure a little bit. That's too low for me. Grab my block. Awesome. I might even go up with a height here. Again, this is optional. You do not have to do this. Keeping that tailbone tucked, core engaged. When you're ready, inhaling back up to warrior two. Your next breath, going into peaceful warrior. Foundation stays the same. Front arm reaches up, back arm rests on a hip, a thigh, perhaps a chin. Did I say chin? I meant shin. And then inhaling back to warrior two. And getting ready for Trikonasana or triangle pose. Straighten my front leg. I like to shorten my stance. Not essential. Tucking my tailbone, engaging my core as I hinge forward. And my front arm, for me today, is going to find a block. Maybe you find a shin, a thigh, the floor. That'd be cool. Gaze towards your fingertips, towards the floor. And when you're ready, inhaling back up. Take your hands to your waist. I'm going into a wide-legged forward fold. So take that front foot and rotate it so that now both of our toes are pointing towards the side of the mat. Hands at your waist. Using your core, really drawing it together, inhaling, then exhaling, forward fold. Maybe playing around with the direction of your toes, pointing inwards, pointing outwards. Maybe you've got a block and you'd like to rest your forehead, if that's available to you. You can play around with how close your feet are or how wide your feet are, so how wide your stance is. And with this wide-legged forward fold, energetically, we're leaning forward. So our energy, although we're not physically leaning forward, energetically, we are. Perhaps you'd like to play around with wide-legged forward fold a little bit. So you can take your pointer finger and your middle finger and wrap them around your big toe. You can take your hands maybe and reach behind you. That's accessible to you in this moment. You can take your hands and have them rest your lower back, opening up your heart. Maybe they're just resting right in front of going to invite some movement here into our wide-legged forward fold. You can stay in stillness if that feels good. I'm going to start by going off to my left. I'm going to bend my left knee, straightening my right, just walking my hands over to the side. Just maybe feeling a side stretch, keeping my feet connected to the earth. I'm not rising up on any of my feet, they're nice and flat. With an inhale, coming back through center, and then exhale, going off to the other side. Again, my feet are both flat. I'm going to do this a couple more times. Inhaling, coming up through center. Exhaling, going off to one side. And last time, inhaling, coming through center. Inhaling back. Take your hands to your waist, really engaging your core here, using only the strength of your core to lift your body up. Take that front toe, pointing it towards the front of the mat. Cartwheel your hands down, and then make your way back to plank, either through tabletop, or if you'd like to try again, pushing the earth away from you. And maybe even come your fingertips, not tippy toes. Words are hard. Draw your knee towards your chest, and then step it back. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, baby cobra. Exhale, pushing back to your dog. Walking your way towards your hands. Meeting in a forward fold. Exhale. And reaching up. And exhaling, hands at heart center. Okay, folks, so we're gonna have a little bit of yogi playtime with our pose today. So get your block or block-like thing. We're actually gonna start in a pose called Malasana. You'll also hear it as Yogi Squat. Now, I used to be able to do this. Not that this matters, with or without a block. I used to be able to do this without a block, but for you guys, so I'm gonna be facing you, but you might want to use the width of your mat as a guide here, because it's really nice to come down with your feet nice and wide, and you do want your toes to point straight. Well, that's the goal, right? You may find that your feet go off to the side, and that's what mine do. But I'm working towards straightening that. Okay, but this is where a block comes in, which is super nice. You can have it high, medium, or low. But you don't have to have this, this is just for support. I'm gonna have mine at medium, because I'm working on straightening my toes. So I'll sit here, have my feet nice and wide, and then my elbows here. So this is a modification for Malasana or Yogi Squat, and this is just prepping us for the work that we're gonna do with crow here in a moment, and that's our arm balance that we're gonna focus on. So let's hang out in Malasana as I talk to you about crow. Crow is a fabulous introduction to arm balances. Arm balances are some of the most interesting poses for me. They challenge me personally in ways that a lot of other types of poses don't, because it asks to engage in core and shoulder and arm strength. Two things I don't really have. So I don't love them, which means that it's something I choose to practice. Just as part of my personal exploration and the exploration of my physical practice. Arm balances also are really interesting because some people find practicing crow a little scary. And I think you'll see why in a few minutes. But what's great about crow is there are a lot of ways to support yourself through this. So arm balances tap into not just challenges for us physically, but challenges for us in here as well. So, with no further ado, I'm actually going to remove this. I think we're ready. So crow, I'll show you it first, and I'm only going to show it to you briefly because I can't hold it for a super long time. But the goal of the pose is to, well, I shouldn't actually use that type of language, but what we collectively as a group are going to maybe shoot for is to have your knees resting somewhere on the backs of your arms or towards your armpits. And eventually what happens is that your toes come up off the ground. So your hands will be splayed and not quite shoulder width apart. The balance actually comes if your hands are actually a little bit closer together. And they'll be a little bit more in front of you. And eventually, and I'm going to stop talking here in a second, but eventually, as you begin to energetically move forward, your toes come off the earth. So if you blinked, you missed that. So I'll do it one more time. Don't blink. Because I'm not doing this a third time. No, I'm kidding. I can't do it a third time. But yeah, so you balance yourself, get your knees somewhere here on the back of your arms or towards your armpits, and then begin to move forward. Here we go. Crow pose. So there are lots of ways though to get there, to be able to hold it. On my best days, I can hold that for quite a while. Obviously not my best day. But again, yoga's a practice, not a perfect. Last week I may have been able to hold crow for 5 minutes, and today I can barely hold it. It's all about where you are during this day and meeting yourself where you're at. So let me show you a few ways you can meet yourself where you're at with crow pose. And this is where the block is really, really handy. And this is a great thing to do as you begin to explore crow. And actually, if you have 2 blocks, it just gives you a little bit of a wider platform. Not necessary. So you're going to come up onto your block. This is going to create space so that you're already closer to expressing crow without having to actually take your feet off the ground. And maybe you can see now why some people get really nervous with crow. Many times I have walked out of a yoga practice with red marks in various parts of my face because I have literally face planted onto the mat. So what you can do to avoid that is you can put a blanket down if you're worried about your moneymaker. Cool. And again, just play around with this. So, okay, this is for face protection. This is to create some space. I'm gonna take my hands on the earth, and you can either watch me right now, or you might want to hit the pause button and just have some yogi playtime now. Take 5, 10 minutes, whatever. And this might be bust out 1 for me, for what it's worth. This could be bust out 1, and that's awesome. And as you play, maybe bust out 2 is now, that's just too close. Bust out 2 is actually getting your knees here and beginning to put weight into the backs of your arms. And just slowly, slowly beginning to move in the direction putting your weight into your arms. And then eventually maybe remove blocks. All of this doesn't have to happen today. And if you fall, just try again. Just get back up and try it again. One more piece of advice, if you haven't hit the pause button yet, and potentially if you have, and then you press play and you hear this, you might chuckle to yourself. But when you go into this pose, your gaze Don't do this, or you will do a somersault. Your gaze doesn't go behind you. Your gaze goes maybe a few inches in front of you. Okay? That's my last piece of advice. Have fun, yogi playtime, and when you're done, hit play and we'll begin our cool down. Okay, so at this stage, maybe you didn't hit pause and you're just ready to carry on because you're like, no thanks, Alyssa. That's great. If maybe you've been playing around with crow for a half an hour, which is awesome. Our counter pose, or pose that we're going to engage in to just counteract some of the work we've been doing in crow, we're going to go back into Malasana or yogi pose. So if you want your block, get your block. And we're going to treat it as more of a supported, restorative pose. We don't want to go into it really deeply. Maybe we take our elbows and we push out our knees. Back nice and straight, hands at heart center. And just coming back into this moment and giving yourself a moment of gratitude for maybe trying something that was challenging for you. Maybe confronting fear and anxiety with this pose. Maybe confronting failure and frustration with this pose. Or maybe having gratitude for yourself for coming into this pose and holding it if you were successful, which is awesome. All of this is awesome. And if this stretch feels good, please stay here. Otherwise, remove the block. And send your feet straight in front of you. I'm going into a little twist here. Draw one knee towards your chest. And you can either leave your foot on the inside of your thigh or you can cross it over. Just whatever feels good to you. Give yourself a little hug to your opposite arm. Before going into a twist, just sit here for a moment. And perhaps you feel a stretch here on the side of your glutes. Maybe you don't, that's okay. And when you're ready, taking your arm and swinging it behind you, acting like a kickstand. Nice straight back. Send your gaze behind you a little bit. Once we hold this pose, with every inhale, rising out of that pose just a bit, and with an exhale, going a little bit deeper. And continuing to do that, inhaling, coming out a bit, and exhaling, going a bit deeper. Staying here if that feels good, or coming back to center and releasing that leg, drawing the next one up towards your chest. And keeping that foot either on the inside of the thigh or bringing it to the outside. Perhaps feeling a stretch. Just for a moment. When you're ready, taking that other arm, spinning it around, acting like a kickstand. Nice tall spine. Inhale and exhale, begin to twist. Each breath, inhaling, coming out a bit, and exhale, going a bit deeper. Sending your feet in front of you. Going into a seated forward fold, maybe taking a moment to remove any flesh so that your sits bones can connect with the earth. Inhale, arms up. And with an exhale, hinging at your hips, forward folding here. Perhaps your hands come to your thighs, maybe your shins. A nice micro bend in the knees. Perhaps your fingers have grown. Your big toes. If it's available to you, you can send your head towards your knees. It's okay if this isn't available to you. Just breathing here, allowing gravity to do its work. Maybe with each breath you go a little bit deeper or not. Release when you're ready. And coming onto your back. Let's draw our knees to our chest right away, giving ourselves a little hug. Maybe rolling our knees in circles, giving our lower back a massage. Maybe feeling extra nice during this class, having worked our back a bit more than normal. Roll to the side. If you're drawing circles with your knees, make sure you go in opposite directions as well. And finding stillness. Keeping one knee towards your chest and the other one straight. Going into a nice twist. When you're ready, taking that knee that's drawn towards your chest, twisting over the leg that you have extended. Maybe sending one arm off to the side, in the opposite direction that you're twisting. Deepen that twist a little bit. Staying here. When you're ready, inhaling back to center. Drawing both knees back towards your chest. And sending your other leg straight, keeping your other knee towards your chest. And then exhaling into a twist. Sending that other arm towards the side. Here you go. Coming back to center. Drawing both knees again towards your chest.
to our final pose before Shavasana, Happy Baby. With Happy Baby, you can take your knees nice and wide, maybe taking your hands and grasping the outsides of your feet. But sometimes what can happen is our shoulders can get pulled really far forward. We really want our shoulders to be close to actually being on the ground. So if we end up getting pulled forward when we try and do that, what we can do actually is grab behind our knees. Continue to roll the side, it feels good. This moment, taking the opportunity to get yourself ready for Shavasana, maybe adding a layer, putting socks on, putting a bolster to rest underneath your knees. If you'd like a little bit of lower back support, especially after working our core, this will feel nice. Allowing yourself to come to a position of rest. It's okay. Pay attention back to your breath. When you're ready, you can begin to lengthen your inhales and your exhales. Maybe do a big body stretch. Invite movements by wiggling your fingers and your toes. When you're ready, slowly and gently making your way up to a seated position. Hands at heart center. Thank you so much for practicing with me today, for potentially exploring something that might make us nervous or maybe a little scared or a little anxious, but tapping into our power, our empowerment to try something new. The light in me deeply honors and respects the light in you. Namaste. See you next time.